Houston Life starts now. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this very special Juneteenth edition of Houston Life. I'm Derek Schwarr. We'll check in with Tessa in just a few moments. 160 years ago, June 19th, 1865, the very last slaves were freed when General Gordon Granger and his troops arrived in Galveston and read General Order Number 3 to announce that all enslaved people were free. It's important to note this was 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation had officially freed slaves nationwide. So, as these newly freed people in Texas started to move forward with their lives and build communities, one of their settlements became what is now known as Houston's original black neighborhood, the historic Freedmen's Town. Joining us now with more on this neighborhood's past and its future, Sharon Fletcher, Executive Director of the Freedmen's Town Conservancy. Sharon, it's so nice to have you in studio.
Thank you for having me.
The history of Freedmen's Town is so critical because, as you and I were just discussing during the break, these are things that many of us were not taught in our history books. We were not taught this in school classrooms. Right. And that is part of your mission today, to spread the word, remind people of how it all went down.
Absolutely. The work that we're doing, the Houston Freedmen's Town Conservancy, the work that we're doing literally is based on the foundation of being able to protect the story, be able to tell that story, preserve that story, educate and engage folks. And we're able to do that through the efforts of the Houston Freedmen's Town, the Freedmen's Town Visitor Center, which is located right in Freedmen's Town. So like you said, because there's so much not written in our history books, we have that job and that charge of telling the story of Freedmen's Town, and a beautiful story it is.
In case Houstonians or anyone watching this program has not been to Freedmen's Town, essentially 4th Ward, directly west of downtown Houston.
Yes.
This is where you're located. This visitor center, I understand, people are coming from literally all over the world to visit and to see historical photos like the ones we're seeing on our screen right now.
Absolutely. We, since the Freedmen's Town Visitor Center has opened last year, we opened last year, May 30th. So we just kind of made a year being an official location. But we've had folks come through from the Netherlands, from Austria, from Germany. We've had folks come from New York and Seattle and Washington, D.C. to come and have this cultural experience with us. We did an article with New York Times, and it featured 36 hours in Houston. And we literally had folks come from New York and Seattle to come and tour Freedmen's Town, but also kayak on the bayou. So pretty interesting opportunity. But yeah, people are searching for those cultural destinations and experiences.
And I love that people from around the world are also searching for answers. And there is this curiosity about part of our past that, again, many of us did not learn about.
Right.
You told me that you grew up in a family where Juneteenth was always celebrated.
Yeah.
It did not become an official federal holiday until then President Joe Biden signed it into law back in 2021.
Yep.
This is something your mother got to see before she passed away.
Oh, yeah. And her words were, "It's about time." And as I shared with you, I had been celebrating Juneteenth since I was about 4 or 5 years old. We were getting together, gathering with the family, celebrating together our connectedness, which is something that Juneteenth does for us. It brings us together. And so being in this space where we're celebrating 160 years, we hope that people find it inspirational and necessary to come and connect with the community of Freedmen's Town, learn more about the story and the people that were there. We're talking about the last enslaved people who were freed in Galveston, in the Galveston and the surrounding areas, who come to Houston and who build a community literally from nothing. Where they settled was the South Banks of Buffalo Bayou. It was a swamp area.
Yeah.
And so now we get to see what was a thriving community, but our work is literally harnessed in bringing that back, bringing that interest back into Freedmen's Town, and so that people understand the history that was there. At one point in time, there were over 400 black businesses in Freedmen's Town.
Wow.
95% of the black middle class lived in Freedmen's Town. It boasted barbershops, shoe repair stores, drug stores. You had the Rainbow Theater. You had Colored Carnegie Library. You had the Pilgrims Building, which is a place where all African Americans can go and get resources, but they also ran their businesses out of those spaces. So this community was built on faith, family, education, entrepreneurship, and community at the end of the day. And so we're doing our very, very best to continue to push those efforts forward through our Building What We Started campaign, which is a way for us to be able to reclaim the narrative, the story and the history of not only Freedmen's Town, but also for Juneteenth and the journey of African Americans. And so people understand it's not just Houston's history, it's not just Black history, but it's American history.
Well, and talk about resilience, too. I'm so glad you pointed out that when folks were settling in the 4th Ward, historic Freedmanstown. I mean, the swampy banks of Buffalo Bayou,
Yes.
that they were able to take that and create a thriving Black community. Do you find that when you are telling the story of Freedmanstown, that a common response you get from people is just surprise and like, oh, I didn't know that?
People are very much so surprised, but it also is an opportunity to make a point that Black folks had the ingenuity, the intelligence, they were innovative, so they knew how to build spaces. This is what they had been doing all of their lives. So to be surprised that a community like Freedmanstown would be erected out of freedom and emancipation, it shouldn't surprise people at all. As a matter of fact, there's a fun fact that we tell people all the time. It's not necessarily just a fun fact, but it's the truth. When Hurricane Harvey came, everybody else was looking for electricity and floodwaters were everywhere. Freedmanstown was bone dry and they had electricity.
They had figured a few things out
They
there
did.
in Freedmanstown.
They absolutely did.
So this year, because it's been 160
Yes.
years since the message of emancipation
Yeah.
reached Galveston by federal order, what are some of the ways you're going to look back and commemorate this date?
So what we're doing to honor and commemorate 160 years of not only emancipation, but 160 years of community as well for Freedmanstown. Freedmanstown is referred to as the child of Juneteenth. We were born right out of that particular event. But on June 19th, we will be celebrating our Juneteenth Fest. And so we're inviting people to come out, be with us on that day from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. Musical performances. There's some poetry. There's some workshops that'll be there. And more importantly, we'll be having conversation with Dr. Mark Lamont Hill. There'll be tickets available for sale, and then we'll be dancing it out at the end of the night. And then the very next day, we have a rhythmic performance that will be over at the historical Bethel Church. Tickets are $25. Come out and join us.
Well, and that is an incredible church, by the way, for Houstonians or anyone, again, watching this who has not been out to Freedmanstown in the historic 4th Ward. Get on out there, especially for Juneteenth, but year-round, there is always something going on.
Yes.
Even just walking through the streets.
Yes.
Walking through those cobblestone streets, there is something I cannot describe the feeling there.
Yeah.
It's a historic place.
It's the work of our ancestors. Those brick streets are over 100 years old. They were laid by the residents who lived there in Freedmanstown. And part of our work is to continue to preserve those. We have a project that's happening right now where people will see the full restoration and preservation of those streets, late 2027, early 2028 sometime. But that's part of the work that we're doing. And it does do something to you just to be there and stand there and be in space and community with the ancestors who came before us, who did that work.
Well, Sharon Flesher, thank you so much for doing that work.
Thank you.
And for telling these stories and keeping them alive. It's an honor to have you in studio
Absolutely.
today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, you are welcome anytime. Happy Juneteenth, y'all. To learn more about the Freedmanstown Conservancy, you can look for the scene on Houston Life section of our website, houstonlife.tv.